In today's episode of the Mind Deep Dive podcast, we're exploring a question that's more common than most people realize. Why do intelligent kids often grow up to feel disconnected, stuck, or lost in adulthood? This audio episode comes with subtitles so you can engage more deeply and take it in at your own pace. Why is it that so many bright, capable children grow into adults who feel unmotivated, isolated, or emotionally distant? These were the kids who stood out, praised for their potential, told they were destined for greatness. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, that promise began to unravel. What once felt like a gift started to feel like a burden. Now, many of those same kids, once ahead of the curve, struggle with everyday things. They can't seem to start projects, follow through, or build close connections. And the worst part? On the surface, everything looks fine. They're still sharp, still competent. But inside, there's a quiet emptiness, a constant sense that life is happening around them. And they're just watching from the sidelines. And here's the truth, there's a reason for this. When intelligence becomes a child's identity, it can quietly turn into a trap. Let's break that down. Because the issue here isn't about failure. It's about an old survival strategy that simply stopped serving its purpose. And once you understand how you got here, you can begin to change direction. When we're young, our sense of self is often built on simplicity. A kid might see themselves as the funny one, or the one who loves dinosaurs. It's not very nuanced, but that's normal. That's how identity starts. For some kids, the core label they latch onto is, "You're smart." It's a label that sticks. Reinforced by teachers, parents, peers, it becomes central to how they view themselves. And for a while, it feels great. Being the smart one often means things come easier, less studying, faster results, more praise, more attention. But there's a cost, because that praise often isn't for effort, it's for ease. You're rewarded not when you work hard, but when you do something effortlessly. And gradually, a subtle but dangerous belief forms. If I'm truly smart, things should always be easy. That belief becomes a mental trap. Because as life gets more complex and challenges become real, effort becomes unavoidable. But now, effort feels like a sign of weakness. You start to think, if I'm struggling, does that mean I'm not smart anymore? So you begin avoiding anything that feels hard. You don't volunteer answers unless you're sure. You don't try new things unless you know you'll succeed. You stick to what's familiar, safe, validated. And slowly your world starts to shrink. While others are out there failing, growing, learning, you stay in your comfort zone, keeping up the image of the kid who's always ahead. And the longer you protect that image, the harder it becomes to evolve beyond it. At some point you realize you've built your entire self-worth on something fragile. And now you're terrified to risk anything that might break it. This is where isolation creeps in. Because growth and connection go hand in hand. We bond through shared experiences, through trying, failing, laughing, struggling together. But when you opt out of that, when you remove yourself from the messy, imperfect parts of life, you miss the very moments that build connection. You don't join the club because you might not be good at it. You don't take the class because it's outside your comfort zone. You keep your distance because vulnerability feels like exposure. So you retreat. And instead of connecting emotionally, you rely on analysis. You try to understand people instead of relating to them. That's called cognitive empathy, where you can recognize what someone is feeling, but you don't really feel it with them. It lets you function socially, but it's draining. Because every conversation feels like a performance. You're calculating your responses, scanning for cues, trying to get it right. And when socializing becomes another thing you have to be good at, you start avoiding that too. This is when the loneliness deepens. So what do? You turn to what you've always known, logic. You analyze your feelings. You build arguments in your head to convince yourself that you're okay. But emotional wounds don't heal through analysis. Intelligence is a tool for solving external problems. But when you try to use it to fix your sense of self, It just loops in circles. Because no amount of thinking can answer the emotional question, am I enough? That answer doesn't live in your mind, it lives in your heart. And for many gifted kids, emotional development was the part that got skipped. When the pain becomes too sharp, the ego steps in for one last defense. I'm not lonely. I'm just different. I don't connect because others are too shallow. I'm not missing out. They are. This mindset is a defense mechanism. It's not confidence. It's protective arrogance, a way to feel superior instead of feeling excluded. But the price? Real connection becomes impossible. Because connection requires humility. It requires being seen, even in your confusion, even in your failure, even in your pain. So how do we change this? Step 1, and this is essential. You have to release the identity of the smart one. Not because intelligence is bad, but because tying your self-worth to it is like building a house on sand. When your value is based on effortless success, you'll do anything to avoid effort, even if it means sabotaging your own life. The solution? Build your identity around growth, not image. Ask, what will help me move forward? Not, what will make me look competent? Try things and be bad at them. Let yourself feel uncertain. Let yourself show up anyway. That's where real confidence begins, not in perfection, but in participation. The old identity told you your value came from being exceptional. The new one knows your value comes from being human. You're allowed to struggle. You're allowed to grow slowly. You're allowed to not have all the answers. What matters is that you keep showing up, not to impress, but to connect, to experience, to grow. So if any of this struck a chord with you, if you've spent your life trying to be the smartest person in the room, and now you feel like you're missing something deeper, this is where your healing begins. Let go of the performance. Start showing up as yourself, because you don't need to be remarkable to be worthy. You just need to be real. And when you finally step down from that pedestal, you'll realize the world you avoided for so long is exactly where you were always meant to be. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. Share your story. You're not alone in this. Sometimes just naming the pattern is the beginning of breaking free.